to today's webinar on the identification of influential nodes in the social and the complex network. Welcome to Dr. Rishi Ranjan Singh, who is the speaker of today's webinar. So let's take a little introduction about him. Dr. Rishi Ranjan Singh is an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical Engineer and Computer Science, Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bhilai. Sir completed his PhD in 2016 from the Indian Institute of Technology, Ropar. His area of interest is a social and complex network analysis, approximation algorithm, mathematical formulation, vehicle routing problem, graph theory, theoretical computer science, and have a good, powerful research background. So without a further ado, we are starting with our today's webinar. So welcome to Dr. Rishi Ranjan.
Thank you so much, Umang. So the title of this talk is a bit different, it seems, but actually it is conveying the same message. In social and network analysis, the word centrality measure is actually a tool to find influential nodes or edges. So we'll be talking about that, but before that, I always like to kickstart my talk with some basic introduction of networks. So what is a network? First of all, whenever this word used to come in our mind in the old days, so we had just computer network, right? When I was in BTech, I still remember the course computer network, which used to be taught to us, and then we thought, okay, that's all is network. We never understood that actually graphs or graph theory, whatever we are studying, is somewhere related to this whatever computer network, and it is a very small block in the study of networks. So what is actually a network? It is just like in real world, whenever you have entities, entity can be anything. A node means a person, a device, instrument, or you can have some protein, anything, any entity you are taking in abstraction form, and that becomes node. And then the relationship between these entities, the abstraction of that becomes the edges. So network is nothing but abstraction of the real world complex system. So when you take a complex system, it becomes complex networks. When you take simple network, and theoretically we have studying it with the name graph. So it is the same. It is abstraction of some real world entity relationship into a network. Now, it exists already, and we have studied it in different ways. Certainly, we have brains, right? So there is a brain network consisting of neurons as the entities and how they are interacting with each other. That's the neural network relying in our brain. Then there is a circulatory network. The blood is flowing from heart to different parts and returning back to heart. So there is a network, all the wiring, and there are junctions, points, and all that. So that is again another biological network. And there are several different types of other biological networks. Chemical networks, the building, we are able to build tall buildings, we are able to build great devices, and it is all because the chemical bonds are holding, and we are able to manufacture new chemical products. And this all is happening because there is some network which is having very high bonding edges, and you can form chemical network, you can study the structural property. And actually the origin of graph, I don't know if you already know, it has come from studying the chemical structures. Calais was the guy who was studying it. Electrical network, certainly power is coming from power plant to our houses and everywhere. This whole presentation is happening just because there is a power coming to your end and my end too. Then friendship network, right? So when I joined BIT, I was doing BTech, or then I joined IIT. Everywhere you go, you make friends, and that is what a social network is called. Now it can be online social network, or it can be physical social network. For example, your family tree, that is another network. Or how really the whole world is connected through different relationships. Again, there can be different kind of social networks. Mobile networks, we are communicating with each other because of mobile phones. So again, there is a mobile network through towers, through different antennas, and through satellites. So there is a whole network out there also. Computer network, as we were discussing, it is already one of the networks. Road network, we are able to travel from one part of the country to another part. There is a rail network, flight network. So I can spend the whole 1 hour just naming the networks that you can study, but still I might not finish even a small fraction of the number of networks. So when did it all start? The origin is a bit, there are different confusions, but some people say that Euler is the guy who actually took the abstraction of the 7 bridges of Königsberg problem. So what he said that, okay, there were 7 bridges connecting 4 land pieces, and then the question was that can you start from a land piece and really traverse all the bridges one by one without crossing a bridge twice? That was the question. Now, people used to really travel and do that, but I think Euler was a lazy guy like me. So he said, I'm not going to really travel and waste my energy. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just try to solve it on a piece of paper. Sitting in his room, he said that I'm going to solve the problem. And that's what he did at that point. He took the abstraction that the land pieces became node and the relationship between land pieces were the bridges. So he took it as an edge, right? And then he formed this network, which you can see in the right-hand side. And then he said that, can I start from a node and traverse all the edges without lifting my pen? This is the same kind of problem. And that's what became a finding whether there exists an Euler path or not. Right. So from there, network study took a different leap. People started really exploring, taking abstraction of the problems. After a few decades, really the problem scattered into 2 different categories. There are some other categories and there are some overlapping between 2 categories. But network analysis is something that became kind of more research-oriented topic very recently. It has been being studied as a graph theoretical point of view, but from the real world perspective, recently people started really digging into, because of data mining and all that. Those are the kind of quite fancy words nowadays. So network analysis is basically mining the network and trying to find out some important information. For example, which node is important that we're going to study today, then community detection, information diffusion, and a few other things. Now, network optimization is another type of problem where you are given with a network, but you are not trying to analyze the network. What you are trying to do, given some objective function, you are trying to optimize it. And what do you mean by optimize? It's like finding maximization or minimization, solving such kind of problem. So minimum spanning tree, you are trying to find a spanning tree such that the cost is minimum, where the cost is, I think a minimum spanning tree is something very simple problem we study always. We start with that. Graph, maximum flow, finding a maximum flow in network. Facility location problem is another problem, that where to locate the facility such that it is optimal for some given constraint. Vehicle routing problem, I have done some research work. So given a depot and the whole city network, you want to deliver the goods and you want to optimize the route cost or the distance or fuel consumption, something like that. So these are the optimization problems where your goal is to take some objective and try to minimize or maximize it. In this particular talk, we're going to talk about something called centrality measures. But before coming to that, let's understand the motivation. If this is a city network and I want to install these facilities, so the first one is a shopping complex, second one is a fire station, the third one is a petrol pump. Where should I place the first one? Shopping complex, if I have to place, I have to keep in mind that, okay, this is a kind of facility that will be used by everybody, right? On an average, everyone goes to shopping complex for big bazaar, for movie, for different shopping and all that. So it should be placed at a place such that the average distance to the whole crowd should be minimum, so that everyone can reach very quickly to this place, right? So when you are trying to find a node, what you're gonna do, you're gonna try to find that, okay, from this node, if the average distance to other nodes are really minimum, so I should pick that node for installing such a facility. What about a fire station? Should I be using the same concept? Anyone has any idea? Means on an average, it should be minimum, right? Minimum, certainly, we want to minimize the distance. But is the average distance that we want to minimize? Anyone has any idea, please? I think the webinar is also, I would love if you respond once in a while to my questions. Hello? Anyone, any guesses for fire station? Is it, certainly we want to minimize the distance, but is it the average distance? Will the same idea will work? Because we can say that everyone needs this on a daily basis or once in a while, right? We have fire in the house when we are cooking. No, right? It is not something that everyone is going to use on the daily basis. It will be something like once in a while, but that is a very emergency situation. You want it to reach as soon as possible. So then the importance of a node is not about having least average distance to all the nodes, but it should be least to all the nodes in some sense. So there will be a limit. So basically for a given node, there is a concept called eccentricity. I think some of you might have heard. So it says that the farthest distance for a given node, that is the limit. That is that if fire happens at that point, that is the worst case scenario for you. So you're going to find that worst case scenario for all the nodes, and you can use that to really identify which node is the best. Now, what about petrol station? Certainly, again, you can say, okay, on an average, it should be closest. But here, I think it should be on some place where through many of the paths are passing through, right? So if most of the paths are passing through a given node, I think you should make that node as a fuel station. So if you really want to install the shopping complex goes here as per the measure. We will talk about the measures very soon. This fire station goes to this place, while the petrol pump in this case comes here. But it is not always certain that it will remain at the same place, right? So, okay, let's take another example. So Ravi and Hari, there are two guys, right? So Ravi is riding on his Bullet, Hari is in his BMW, and really they are going on the road. Just a second, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are enough audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. I thought I lost connection because there was no noise from the other side. Okay, good. So Ravi and Hari, they are going, and Ravi has Bullet and Hari has this BMW. So definitely Ravi was on bike. So let's assume that as per the Indian regulations, Ravi just was traveling with one and Hari was traveling with 2 or 3 people. Now, because they're on the road, they're really vehicles just scratched each other. Now, what will happen in Indian scenario? If it is Gurgaon, I think people can shoot each other, right? But assuming the not so that kind of situation, I think still people will get out of their vehicle and they try to really interact in a heated environment, and then abusive words, and then fight might really start. Now, in this given scenario, if we say that, okay, everyone is of the same physics. So what do I mean by that? No one is Khali and no one is Rampal Yadav, right? Rajpal Yadav. So everyone is of the roughly same physics. So we are saying that when the fight happens, one person can, if 2 persons are fighting, no one will win. It will be a draw. In this case, when the fight will happen, who is going to win? Certainly Hari, because there are 4 people on Hari's side and there are 2 people only on the Ravi's side. But they were kind of engineering graduate. They were not some arts college or something like that. They fight on the spot. They said, okay, we are professionals. We should not fight on the road. Let's take this matter to some other place, because if we fight here, police will catch. So what they say, okay, let's go and meet at this point of time at a given venue. They split it and they again tried to meet. Now what happens? Ravi's one friend was actually university leader. So he got so many people with him. But Hari's friends just had few more friends. He was one of the studious guy. He was not really much into politics and he didn't had so many friends. Now who is going to win? Certainly now Ravi is going to win. So if the fight might have happened at that point, we were just looking the neighborhood of Ravi at that point, right? And Hari at that point of time. But when you change the venue, then you are looking at the friendship at 2 different levels. Your friend and your friend's friends. So if your friend has so many friends, again, that gives you some importance. So this whole example is just to give you idea that sometimes you are not important in the sense you don't have so many friends, but your friends are really having so many other friends. So when it goes up to that level, you might really become very important. Again, if again they meet for an auction of a house and they say that, okay, I'm going to take the revenge for the last one. So Ravi had 1 million in his account, Hari had 0.2 million. Now, Ravi had 2 friends, while Hari has just 1 friend. So Ravi thought, okay, having 2 friends, maybe I can get more money because of the more friends I have. And then they tried to really get as much as money from their friends. They said, okay, lend me money. Now, Ravi's two friends had 1 million and 2 million respectively, altogether 4 million. But Hari's friend was something big shot guy, very rich guy. He had 50 million in his account. Who is going to win the auction? Certainly Hari. So it doesn't matter at times that you have many friends, right? In the previous example, when there was a fight, having more friends is more important. But there might be some different scenario when you are trying to find an important node, and then not the number of friendship will be important, but with whom you are connected, that makes more sense. You might be a guy in a village with hundreds of people knowing you, but there might be a person whom just Prime Minister Modi knows. I think there is a huge difference between these two people, right? Having 10 friends, okay, but when there is a fight, certainly you are going to win. But when it comes to some other part of influencing or something like that, so then the other guy is going to win. So this whole all set of examples were just to motivate you that one thing, that importance is not a well-defined term. It depends on application, and from application to application, the definition changes. So therefore, important node is not a very specific node in a given graph. It changes from one node to another. Some other node becomes more important depending on some application. So if you want to answer such kind of question in social networks or complex networks, that which actor is really most influential, which road is the busiest, which proteins are vital for a cell to live, which actor in a social network will hear the news very quickly, which paper is really of high prestige or very high impact factor or something like that, which web page is more important than the other one. So these kind of questions have inbuilt, to answer it, you need to find the centrality measures, which is a tool to give you important nodes. Basically, this tool ranks all the nodes in the graph or network in a given order. Then you can pick the top nodes or top node. So the general question for centrality is, which is the most important central node in a given network? That's a general question. And it's basically tries to quantify the intuitive notion of importance. That's again based on different applications, right? Now, these are the four very classic centrality measures. I'm just gonna go through these, and then because of the time constraint, I will leave it if you are still interested for different other centrality measures. So these are the first few very traditional centrality measures: degree, closeness, betweenness, eigenvector. So I'm gonna just quickly define each one of them, and then we'll go in details. So degree centrality is something very simple. It says that how many links you are connected with. So for each node it is 2. So you can understand the degree centrality of every node is same. So no node is more important than other one. Every node is of the same importance. In this case, what will happen? The central one is having degree 4 while the other one is having degree 1. So the node at the center is more important than the other ones in terms of degree, right? So that is the degree centrality. Just the number of links, the degree of a node, that is the degree centrality. In this case, so many nodes of degree 3, and all are of the same importance when you are talking about some importance with respect to the degree of a given node, right? So what degree centrality says in terms of social networks or other places, it basically tells you the popularity of a person. How many friends he has, that much popular a person is. Higher degree means higher strength. You have many followers, means if you go on Twitter, Insta and other places, people try to really increase their followers so that whenever they pass a message, whenever they convey something, it really quickly reaches to a maximum portion of the crowd. Lowest degree node is kind of isolated person or kind of very least popular person in the crowd. And the problem with the degree is it just looks at the next neighbor. It just looks at your friends. It doesn't look at your friends or beyond that. So that is a limitation of this centrality, right? So application can be actually of degree to find influential people, to hypothesize that what kind of emotion support is available. For example, why during picking brand ambassador for companies, always the companies look at whose followers are really increasing or someone is on the hike, and they try to find that person as the brand ambassador for their product. Because, for example, if Amitabh Bachchan comes and says, okay, Sona Chandi Chanpras is really good, you should eat. People believe, some at least, right? But if a farmer, he comes, or a guy who has really made it, sitting in the factory, if he comes and says on the TV, oh, it is very good and all that, no one will care about it, because that person doesn't have any number of followers close to even Amitabh Bachchan. So that is the kind of difference. That's why people hire very well-known people, because their reach is very high. Their people connected to that person who follow them is very high. So highly visible actors, and the problem is these nodes are also very highly exposed for a flowing infection. So as you can see the scenario of COVID-19, most of the highly influential nodes actually became affected very quickly, because they are meeting to so many people. They are exposed to their friendship, or their number of people connected to them, certainly in the physical sense, in this case, not on Twitter or WhatsApp, is very high. So they are highly exposed to a disease or something that is flowing. And not disease, also the information reaches to these guys very quickly, because they have so many friends. Next one is closeness centrality. So closeness centrality says that it was also called as a status very early by Harari. So it says that inverse of the distance, summation of distance to all other nodes. If you take distance of a given node to all other nodes and take the inverse of that, that is the closeness centrality. A node having higher this value, that means it is having the lower average shortest distance to all other nodes, right? By doing the inverse, that's what we are achieving. And just for normalizing, you can multiply it by n-1, so everything fits in 0 to 1 scale. Now, if you try to find closeness centrality again for the same example that we have considered, so for in this case, it's still 1/4 for all, right? So everyone is of the same importance, even for the closeness. In this case, still the central one is the most important, while the other ones are lower importance, because the paths for the periphery nodes are 7 to all other nodes, while for the center one, it is actually 4. So this is a star network. And the previous one was a cycle network of a very small size that we have considered, just to understand the centrality measures. Again, this is another example that we took. Here, if you remember, for the degree, so many nodes were actually of the higher importance. But in this case, only 2 nodes are becoming as the higher important nodes, the top important nodes, right? So again, you are trying to find the distance from a given node to all other nodes, and you are taking the inverse. So if you want to install a shopping complex, I think these 2 nodes are the best candidate for installing a shopping complex, because you want to have the minimum average distance to all other nodes. Now, what closeness centrality means? It is like the expected time. If any information is originating in a network at some random location, so how much expected time it will take for that information to reach to a given node. So if a node is highly closeness, that means the information is going to really reach very quickly. But the problem with this definition of this particular centrality is that it doesn't work well in the disconnected networks. As you can see, the formula here that we had, when you actually put infinite, because in the disconnected sense, you say that the distance between 2 nodes are infinite. Once you place infinite, everything becomes 0. So that's why it doesn't work well in the disconnected networks. Another alternative to resolve that disconnected problem is harmonic centrality. So you don't take inverse of the summation of the distances, but you take the summation of the inverse of the distances. Now in this case, if something is disconnected, only that particular value will become 0, and still you will have the closeness centrality in the connected component where that particular node is lying. So in this case, again, normalization factor is 1/n-1. And when you try to find again the same for all the nodes, same higher for the central node in this case, but here again you see the same 2 nodes. So harmonic centrality is an alternative to closeness centrality, because it is highly correlated. See, it is not guaranteed that 100% it will give the same kind of ranking, but it is highly correlated. That means most of the time it gives the same nodes as top central as closeness centrality. So the application of closeness or harmonic centrality is basically when you want to pick that node which is having a high pure information, so higher fidelity, right? Means the information is not affected by a lot of noise, because we know that when information starts flowing, 3 becomes 13 after few hops, right? It's a great proverb ki 3 ka 13 kar dena. So it's something like that. So if it doesn't travels through so many nodes, that means it reaches to you very quickly, so you might get accurate information than a noisy information. Nodes for installing facilities that need to be used on the regularly by the whole network. So again, it is for a shopping complex kind of facility, and this kind of nodes quickly get exposed. See, in the previous case, it was highly exposed, but this one is not highly exposed. It might be sitting at some interior point, but infection, when it is flowing from a node to another node, because the average distance is very low, it reaches to that node very quickly. So in the early days, someone of that kind will become infected very quickly. Eccentricity, as we were talking, it is another alternative to used for closeness. Means it is again based on the distance, but not exactly as closeness. So it is coming from the fire station example. So here you take the eccentricity of a node as inverse of the maximum distance from that node to any other node. So you are not taking the summation of the distances, you are taking the maximum of the distances, and you are taking the inverse of that. Right, and 1 upon why we are taking, so that if we have higher value, so if the maximum distance is higher, that means that node is not really the good node for us. So we just take the inverse just to say that if our value is high, that means it is really more important. That's all has been done because of the inverse thing. Now it is already normalized, and again if you try to compute, it is 1/2 for all. So every node is of the same importance. Then here again the central one is 1, while for the other one it is actually half. So again central one is the most important, while the periphery nodes are not that much important. In this example now, if you see, apart from these 2 nodes, this node is also, you see there is a third node which is also of the same importance in terms of eccentricity. Wherever you install the facility, it is of the same case. Right. So eccentricity is a bit different than closeness and harmonic one. So usage is for the cases where you have the application in the emergency case and it is not used by the whole network on an average, right? It is once in a while an emergency situation. So for example, when you are installing a hospital, what kind of centrality or importance or formula should I use? So hospital is another kind of facility or service. But see, should I be using an emergency one or should I be using on an average? Actually, it will be something kind of hybrid, because for a hospital, people go in on an average once in a while because of cough, cold, and different kind of things, right? So it is used by almost the whole crowd once in a while. But at the same time, when there is an accident, there is a heart attack, there is someone fell down, so you want to take that person very quickly to the place. So it is also an emergency situation. So you have to combine the closeness and eccentricity to find a better ranking. So you have to take the both ranking, and then you have to use some linear combination or hybridization, something like that, or you can define your own centrality in terms of that. Right. Now, next one is betweenness centrality. So I hope many of you have seen this movie Laksh, right? So in this movie, this is a few of the frames that I clicked. So the backstory is that terrorists were shelling on this particular highway that connects Siachen Valley to India, and they wanted to capture this because they can stop the supply to the army setting in Siachen Valley. Why they wanted to do? Because if the supply is stopped, then the army setting for a long time cannot hold their position and they will lose the advantage. So that's what the soldiers were telling Preeti Zinta, and at the same time you can see the terrorists were talking the same thing, that this is the highway. Now, why they wanted to capture this highway? Because this was the only highway connecting Siachen Valley to India. So its importance becomes very high. So if terrorists want to capture the one point, they just have to cut this thing. And then once it is disconnected, you can really win the other side. But suppose if there were 2 different paths to the same place, then capturing one direction will never help. Still, the army can send its supply from the other route. So that's what is something, the motivation for studying betweenness. that it tries to capture the fraction of shortest paths between all pair of nodes passing through a given node. So V is a node for which you want to compute the bitwidth centrality. So you are taking all pairs of the node except V, such that out of those many pairs S and T, how many fraction of shortest path for each of such pair is passing through a given node V. And you are doing it for all possible pairs and you are computing it. And normalization factor is actually n minus 1 C2 because we are excluding the node V. So you just take the inverse of that and you multiply it for normalizing, because this is the maximum value you can attain for any between a central node. Now, take this particular example. So again, here if you see the red node, the bitwidth centrality of that node is 9 because there are 9 total pairs from each side. So 3 into 3, total 9 shortest paths are passing through this node. So bitwidth centrality of this node is 9. So if you cut this node, certainly no communication can be made from one side to another side. So its importance is very high. At the same point, this node has a lot of brokerage power. It says that pay me 1 rupee for every message I pass from that side. So it takes a brokerage. So it's called controlling or brokerage power of a node also. At the same time, it's a most targeted node if you want to really break down the network, right? Or the load on this node is very high. So means this node will be very much busy in terms of making the communication possible. But as soon as you load another node, just exactly in parallel, what happens? It becomes 4.5 because now half of the paths are passing through that, half of the paths are passing through that. So basically, if you take these two nodes connected to this red and blue, you will see that out of 2 shortest paths, one passes through this, one passes through this. So only half fraction of the shortest paths are passing through a given node. So if you shut down a node, the red one, still through blue, you can do the communication. So the importance is lower. The importance is lower in this case. The load is lower, the target is lower, and at the same time, brokerage power is lower. So if you try to find the bitwidth centrality of the nodes in this case, you'll see that equal importance for all the nodes. Again, still the central one is of 6 importance because there are total 6 paths that are passing through that. But for the periphery nodes, they are of no importance in terms of bitwidth centrality. And in this case, only this node is the highest bitwidth central than the other one because it helps communication between so many nodes. For other, there are alternatives available, but for this node, there is no alternative available. So that is looks something strange, but that is the calculated value. Now, bitwidth centrality actually infers the brokerage power or the control over the flow, but at the same time, it talks about the load and a target node capacity, that if someone wants to break that down the network, they can target you. Now, assumption is that information is flowing through shortest paths because we are taking shortest path from S to T. So it is with the assumption that information is flowing through shortest path. If you are relaxing this assumption, then certainly there are variations of bitwidth centrality that exist in literature that can be used. Higher bitwidth centrality, there means higher control and higher load, right? And control over major fraction of the flow, but at the same time, higher risk for an attack or failure. So finding and basically you might have heard of blackouts in the US or different parts of world where a system failed, and because of that several other systems failed, and finally for the whole section of country the power was gone away. It was because a very high bitwidth central was knocked out, and because it was capturing a high load, the load got distributed and the neighboring nodes were not able to manage that load. So again, if you want to find out which nodes are very important and higher load and you want to always keep them running with all the facilities, I think bitwidth centrality can be used in that scenario. So it is detecting communities, if you want to detect communities, or identifying sensitive nodes in a network, or it can be also different flow type of networks. For example, our gas pipeline network, public transit system, all the flight networks, your metro, railway networks and all that, electronics communication system network, wastewater disposal, even the neural networks and all that, bitwidth centrality, even protein interaction network, a huge section of work for curing cancer based on drug target delivery system is based on bitwidth centrality, because it tries to knock down, find a protein, knocking down which can kill a cell. And especially for the cancerous cells, they try to find which protein one should target using the drug. drugs, so that only those cells will be destroyed than the whole other cells. So again, there is a whole direction of research that is done on that. So it is basically try to find the crucial nodes for information flow in brain networks also. Now, these were the three ones. Certainly we are missing one. We'll come back to that. So centralization is another concept to find that what is the centralization of a network, whether the given network is centralized or not. So to find that, this is the mathematical formula where you say that what is the centralization if you had a network of the same size as a star network. So you might have seen in the star network, always the center node is the highest centrality, and while all other periphery nodes are of the least importance, right? So whenever you are talking about the centralization at the denominator, you have the value computed in a star network of the same size, while on the given network you try to compute the same difference of the highest centrality node and other centralities, a summation of that in the numerator and denominator both. Denominator is for a star network of the same size as the given network, and the numerator is computed for the given network. When you take this ratio, you will try to see that how much central the given network is. So if you try to find the centralization of this particular first graph, it's a zero. It's a non-centralized network. And that's why all the nodes were of the same importance. If you take a star network, centralization is 1. If you take even a complete network, no node is of higher importance, your centralization is 0. Right, so that's a basic centralization values, and again for different centralities you can compute it. Now, there are some questions I thought if I will have more time I can just raise and do, but I think there is a lot of content that has to be covered, so I'll skip this part. Basically these questions were basically if one centrality is high and one is low, what can you tell about a given node? So I'll leave it up to you for really thinking maybe after the webinar. So for different combinations, low, high, low betweenness, high closeness, something like that can be used. Now, the last traditional centrality that we're going to talk about is eigenvector centrality. So it was proposed by Bonasich in 1972, and it says that a node is important if its neighborhood is important. Who are your friends? Based on their importance, you are computing your importance. So that's what is this formula that basically it takes AUI, it is the adjacency entry in the adjacency table. So if you are friend with some node V, so what is the importance of that node? You take as summation and you are taking a lambda as just a reduction factor. And that's what tries to compute the eigenvector centrality. And this centrality is very popularly known as PageRank. PageRank is exactly the same measure used at the core of Google page ranking. So Google searches, if you ever thought why Google is able to get the most related pages for you whenever you type any keyword, because it actually takes the whole internet pages available online, and then what it does, it actually finds the high central node in terms of page rank, and then again further it does some filtering and prioritization based on your location, based on your search history and other things. But in the core, still the idea is finding this eigenvector centrality of the pages. And it's like that, if I am friends with important people, I am important. If I know Narendra Modi, sorry, not me knowing Narendra Modi. If Narendra Modi knows me and a few other people knows of some PM or some big personalities, so I am important. Although I might not have so many friends, I might not be very much publicly present, but still I am important entity in the country. While if I might have so many friends but of the not so important value in a village or in a town, then I might be important locally but not actually at the country level. So application, Google uses it, Twitter uses it for recommending users who to follow and all that. And it is actually a more sophisticated extension of the degree centrality, because degree was just looking at your neighborhood. But eigenvector centrality actually tries to look at different layers, because you are saying that your importance is related to your friend's importance. Your friend's importance is actually related to their friend's importance, and likewise. So therefore, it is a more sophisticated version of the degree centrality. Now, there are several other centrality measures exist. For example, CADS, decay, diffusion, H-index. H-index is again, for a researcher, it is something very important index to find that what is their H-index, that how many their papers are cited at least these many times, right? Again, for betweenness centrality, there is a random walk betweenness centrality, stress centrality, and these are very few ones that we are talking about. There are so many other centralities. Now, there are different directions of work that is done for the centralities. Because already we have spent almost 40 minutes, so I'll not go in detail of each of these. I will just give you the idea of the directions, what kind of work people do in these directions. So one direction is computing these centrality measures, trying to find exact algorithm to compute centrality measures. So for degree centrality, it takes order n time for a node. If you want to compute for all nodes, it is order m time. For eccentricity, closest harmonic, it takes m and order mn time for one and all nodes respectively. For betweenness centrality, it's a very interesting that even for a single node, it takes the same time as for all the nodes. So it takes order mn time. I will not go in details of how you compute and really how you get the time. But with betweenness centrality, because of the all pair shortest paths, it takes order mn time. For unweighted graphs, for weighted graphs, it takes order of mn plus n square log n. Okay, by the way, m is the number of edges and n is the number of nodes. How you compute, there is a very popular Brandis algorithm which got a lot citations. It came in 2001 or something, and I think till today there are more than 1,000 citations for this particular paper because it reduced the time from n cube to order of mn. Now one can say that because the number of edges can be of the order of n square, so it is actually the same thing. Order of mn is order of n cube, but most of the real world graphs are sparse, so therefore m is close to order of n because the degree is constant. How many Facebook friends most of us have? The number of Facebook users might be in millions, billions, right? But the number of Facebook friends that we have is less than 1,000 for most of us. So that's what. It doesn't depend on the number of nodes. It's a constant value. How many friends do we keep? So that's why our degree is mostly constant. And as you know that degree is actually what? 2 times E, 2 times the number of edges. So therefore, the number of edges will be degree by 2, which is a constant times the number of nodes overall. And it becomes order of n only, then taking order of n square. So therefore, really it was a huge reduction from order of n cube to order of mn. So it became a very famous paper. I'll skip how it works and all that. I had it because I thought if I will have time, I will go into that. But it's a very interesting algorithm. If you find some time and you are interested working in this area, you must read the paper. It's a very beautiful paper. Now, again, for computing eigenvector centrality, there is a very famous power method to find the eigenvector corresponding to the dominant eigen value. So I think it's if the ratio is of some order, it guarantees that it will really converge based on that. So it's a very famous method. Again, if you have studied linear algebra and all that, so you must have found this algorithm. So I'll again skip that part and go ahead. So next kind of direction that people study is estimation. So for example, betweenness centrality, although it is a polynomial time algorithm order mn time to compute a betweenness centrality of a given node, but order mn also can become very large if n is of the order 10 to the power 6, 10 to the power 8. So even you don't want to spend that much time for computing for all the nodes. You just want to quickly, approximately want to know what is the importance value of a given node or some nodes. So you don't want to compute exactly for all the nodes. So estimation is approximately computing the importance or quantifying the importance of a given node as per a given centrality. For estimation, a lot work has been done by different people, and basically they use something called uniform sampling technique. So they don't take all shortest path, they take a piece or some number of shortest paths. So it is called sampling, and sometimes you do uniform, sometimes you do non-uniform sampling. Basically non-uniform is like there is some metric that you apply before you weights you apply and then you are doing the sampling, and there is something called node sampling or path sampling. So different techniques are available. During my PhD, I work on this estimation problem, and the next one is updating problem also for betweenness centrality. So updating is that networks that we study nowadays, most of the networks are not static, it's a dynamic network. So always the edges are being added or deleted or something like that. So update means there are basically three different type of updates: edge addition, deletion, vertex addition, deletion, or increase or decrease of weight. But in reality, all the updates can be mapped to increase or decrease of edge weights, because if you increase the edge weights for a given node to infinite, all the edges incident on a given node to infinite, that means that node becomes isolated, you are deleting that node. And if you decrease the weight from infinite to some finite value, that means you have added that edge. So it can be edge addition, deletion, vertex addition, deletion can be actually considered in the form of increasing or decreasing the edge weights. So there are different type of algorithms exist. Incremental, that talks about addition and vertex and edge addition, or decreasing the weight, while the decremental is about increasing the weight or actually talking about the deletion part. And fully dynamic algorithms take care of all kind of addition and deletion. Again, a huge number of research work has been done for different centralities, for closeness between the and all combined. And we actually worked in 2013-14 and presented this paper, where if you are updating something in a biconnected component of a network for a bitwidth centrality, you don't need to compute or recompute for the whole network. You just need to recompute for a small block, and for the rest of the network, you can quickly update. So it was able to reduce the time from order mn to order m dash n dash, where m dash n dash is the size of the biconnected component. So if the update is happening in a smaller component, it really does it very quickly. Now, ordering is another interesting problem related to centrality measures. So basically, ordering says that given a huge network, if you just want to rank two nodes, which one is of more importance than the other one? You don't want to compute for all or whatever. You just want to rank two of the nodes in a given network based on some importance measure. Now, if you want to really solve this problem, you can understand there can be three different ways to solve it using this height analogy problem. That if there are some hundreds of people standing in a ground and you want to question that who this X and Y, who is taller than the other one, and you want to really do that. So there are three different methods you can really do that. The first one is you take the inch tape, go to X, measure his or her height, then go to Y, measure his or her height, and then you declare the result. That means actually in terms of centrality measure, you are talking about going and computing the exact centrality of these nodes and then comparing it and declaring the result. The other one is you get a person and ask him to guess the height of X and Y. Now, X is going to guess what is the height of X and the same for Y. And then that person will help you the estimation, and then you can do the comparison and declare the result. Now, this comparison will be that much accurate how much is the guessing power of that person that you have chosen. So it is equivalent to finding estimation algorithms that are trying to give you approximate value, centrality value for a given node, and then you are using that algorithm to actually do the comparison. So more accurate approximation algorithm you have, that much better kind of comparison you can do. That is the second type of approach. You don't have to compute for all nodes, just estimate for one or two nodes for which you have to compare. The third one is you get X and Y and ask them to come on a ground zero. What do I mean by ground zero? You make them stand together with each other, and then I think you don't need to even estimate that if it is 5, 6 or something. It's very visible because one direction you have made their height uniform. So basically they are standing at the same platform. So you just have to look at the vertical and then comparison becomes very easy. So it is like if you want to talk this method in terms of centrality, so it's like some way structurally you have to compare the nodes by making them stand together on the same platform, but still that direction is open. I think one piece of a small problem we solved for ordering for eccentricity, and that too for a special case, but for most of the centralities, again, the ordering problem is still in. For the third kind of method, it's open. So we have done some work for the ordering and we got very good performance for several real world graphs. This is a paper that got published recently in journal, and it was presented, I think, 2015 or 16. So we used around 72 real world networks of the size from few thousand to means close to 1 lakh nodes and some million edges. And really our performance was that for most of the networks with very small number of sampling, that means it was taking order m time for just doing the bitwitness comparison, not even taking order m and time. So we were very lesser than the exact time computation, and still our accuracy of comparison was higher than 90% for most of the cases. Now, next kind of direction to study is weighted networks. So as we know that everyone is not of the same physics. We had this assumption when the fight was happening, right? But your bank account balance, my bank account balance is different. Your physics, my physics is different. Even for two routers made from the same company, their lifetime will be different. Two laptops, two devices coming from the same place, because they will go through different environment. They will, and even their whole thing is not actually uniform, exactly same. Although we say that, okay, they are of the same type. So that's why there are weights attached to everything, and you can do the mapping. So for the edge weights, there is all centralities which were defined in a uniform way. It can be edge weighted centralities defined where you consider edge weights. Now, when you consider edge weights, certainly it exists because distance between two cities are not same for all pair of cities, right? It might be different. Again, the flight cost from one place to another place is not same. Friendship level between two people for a given, you can assume yourself. So for you, there are several friends, and not for each friend you are connected with the same emotion. So that's what there exists weight on the edges, but not on the edges. Also on the nodes also weights exist. For example, how many people are living in a city? That is the weight for a given city, right? And then there can be several other such kind of features, the bank balance or something like that. We were using the bank balance in one of the examples previously. So again, considering the weights on the nodes is also important. So that's what people are working in this direction, considering the weights on the nodes, weights on the edges, and doing different kind of work. Recently, we published a paper where we used the node weighted definition to define a new hybridization of centrality measures, which was presented in a conference, international conference. And currently the journal version is in process. So hybridization, that's what I was talking about, that sometimes you want to hybridize the centralities to find a better importance. For example, for the hospital example, you wanted to take a linear combination of the closeness and the eccentricity, something like that. So many research work has been done for the hybridization of centrality, taking the linear combination, taking one in other case, other in the other case, and something like that. And recently we proposed a method to use the weights generated by one centrality in another centrality to give a hybridization. So that is what we proposed. Next one is group centrality, where you don't compute the centrality of a node, but you compute centrality of a set of nodes. And you try to find, so this becomes very important for the cases that in an organization you want to find which set of people are very efficient to do a job. So for that case, you are not selecting a person, you are selecting a committee. So whom to put in the committee, that kind of application can be solved by group centrality. Apart from that, the one direction always remain to defining new measures, and for a given application applying the existing measures. So for new applications, you find that, okay, for this application, this measure might give me the more important node, or defining new measures. So you'll be surprised that there is a periodic table of network centralities. So these are not all centralities, but this is nothing scientific. See, it is not like a chemistry periodic table. It is for fun, just to see that how many centralities exist. And it doesn't have, this table doesn't have any scientific computation or something based. So it was created by David Skoss, and really he just created it for fun during his PhD, when he saw that many centrality measures have been defined in the literature for different applications. So that's all. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or anything, yes, please feel free to ask.
I'm connecting with the viewer and I'll pass the question to question.
Sure. So can I just skip my slide and stop presenting? Is that okay?
Yes.
So that I can go back to the window of seeing.
Yes, sir, definitely. Okay, sir, the
Thank
question
you.
is that can you elaborate the more example of the closeness centrality?
More example.
Yeah.
Uh, Sorry, more example in application you want to know.
Yes, sir.
See, whenever you are trying to basically see the closeness centrality, the concept came from this facility location problem when you want to install a facility at a place such that you want to minimize the distance to all the nodes on an average. So that is whenever you are installing a facility, that kind of thing is used. Again, if you want to have, for example, you want to install your you want to select a person who gets the information very quickly. So if you are assume that you are a minister of a state or something like that, and so you should be, if you have a limit to pick some few set of people, so you should pick those people who doesn't have a lot of friends, but he has higher closeness centrality, because the information in the crowd that is being generated, right, if it is a political agenda or something like that, whatever, these guys, because they are very much closer to their population, local population, so whatever the rumor, whatever the thing, it will reach to them very quickly, so they will be able to communicate quickly to their minister, and then that kind of whatever the actions that can be taken against that. So I'm just trying to give you one example. I'm just creating, I don't know, right? So do you understand what I'm saying? Because the information reaches to these nodes very quickly, because they are on an average very close to the population. So if you pick such nodes, they will actually able to fetch the news from the population very quickly, and they will be able to supply. So you can take very quick action on whatever the given scenario.
Okay, sir. The next question is that can you elaborate another example of eccentricity?
Okay, yeah, so for example, see, all the emergency services that we install, right? The maintenance services for different power plants or something like that, or even in the power grids, when you are installing something like that. So you want to keep the maintenance unit as close as the places which are of the highest importance or something like that. So you don't want it to be much away. So for example, these fire extinguishers that we place even in a building, that can be used, which place to install it based on the eccentricity, that whenever any fire happens at a place, and fire is just one case of any hazardous event that happens, such that it really grows very quickly, or it really creates a lot of disaster very soon. So you want to really minimize it, you want to close or maintain the incident as soon as possible. So whenever there is an emergency situation, and it is not happening on an average at each of the places, it might happen once in a while, but it is an emergency cases, so you should be using eccentricity.
Okay, sir. I think there is no further questions from the viewer side right now. So thank you so much, Dr. Rishi sir, to share a valuable knowledge, and the Parul University will be thankful for your valuable time and knowledge, sir.
Thank you so much, and feel free if anyone has any doubt or anything, or if you are interested working in this direction, feel free to write to me. My email ID was there in the presentation. It is simple: Rishi, my name, @itbhilai.ac.in. Feel free to write to me at any point of time if you have any queries.
Definitely, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, so I'll be disconnecting.